All right, today we are going to be talking all about orange chromes, and I've been doing a little series where I do deep dives on different types of shimmer shadows, and I've truly been enjoying making the videos, and I think you all have been enjoying them as well. We've done blue-brown duochromes, green-brown duochromes, and blue-purple shifting chromes. Today we're going to be talking all about different types of orange chromes. I consider these to be a little bit out of my comfort zone. I say that because orange is not a color I gravitate to all year round. But I gotta say, over the years, I have come to really appreciate how special a good orange is. And I find that when I do wear them, I enjoy them a lot more than I anticipate. I'm going to be showing you a whole bunch of options with demos of each shade, so let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, starting off with a ColourPop SuperShock shadow, we have the shade Think So Mochi. This is from one of the little trios that came out around the holidays, and it is specifically from the Matcha and Mochi set. I personally think these sets are really well done, and I was honestly surprised by this iridescent. It is a fiery toned orange shade. You also have some gold and a hint of red. It's really lovely as an all-over lid shade. You can even use it as a highlighting shade on the cheeks, inner corner, brow bone. I do really wish that the shades in these sets were available individually, but I gotta say, I think the sets are all well done. So if you like the other shades in the trio, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Alright, the next shade we have is from Sheen Effect, and I actually talked about this shade recently because I did a Sheen Effect video. I've been using Sheen Effect eyeshadows for a couple of years now, and I gotta say I really like the shades that are in these compacts. The texture of the shades really lend themselves to being used on other areas of the face because they have quite a smooth texture. Ideal Type is probably my favorite orange from them. They have a couple of oranges, and this one has this really beautiful yellow-green shift. I actually feel like it's one of the shiftiest orange shades in my collection. I do like to mention this about my Sheen Effect shades, that they do have some emollients in the texture, but I don't really find that they become creasy and they last super well. The next shade I have is also from Sheen Effect, and this one is a little bit newer to me. This is called Music Festival. It's a little bit deeper than Ideal Type, and it has a touch more red. I also think it has some fine holographic specks. Those specks just make the shade look a little bit extra sparkly. And like Ideal Type, this shade also has a very special chrome shift. I think I was actually a bit surprised by the shift of some of these orange shades. A lot of the orange chromes I find do have a yellow shift. Some of them also include a green shift, just depending on the shades and the pigments, but I do find that that is something I really enjoy about orange chromes. Both of these Sheen Effect shades just look like summer in an eyeshadow. Alright, and I am so excited to talk about these Wet n Wild shades. I've talked about them several times on my channel before. And of course, the reason I talk about them is not only because the quality is high, but the price point is really nice. And you can find these at a variety of retailers, including Target, Walmart, Walgreens, and of course their own website. It's been incredibly cool to see how they have expanded their chameleon chrome collection. This is the shade Comet Couture. This is what I would consider to be a jeweled multi-chrome. I mean, this is definitely the type of shade that you can find from indie brands like Clionadh, Terra Moons, Shine by SD, you name it. And the amount of pigment impact you get even on the first swipe is truly impressive. Comet Couture is a beautiful orange option, and it has a golden grungy green shift. The next shade we have is also from Wet n Wild, and it is one of their iridescents, and the iridescents are honestly my favorite part of their new collection. They have 3 of them, and this is the shade Moon Flare. It has an absolutely beautiful golden orange shift in it. And in the mirror, you can also see a green shift. Again, I want to make note that this eyeshadow has a bit of an emollient texture. the Wet n Wild ones more so than the Sheen Effect in my opinion. However, I still feel like the wear on them is pretty fair overall. And I've actually had mine for a few months, and I have to say that in that time, a lot of people have come back and told me they've tried these shades and have been really happy with their purchase. All right, the next shade I have is from Haus Labs, and actually this is a highlighter. It's not marketed to be an eyeshadow, although if you have it, I think it is also a beautiful eyeshadow. And this is the shade Fire Opal, which is truly one of the most unique highlighters in my collection. And I would say one of the more unique highlighters that you can get from a mainstream brand. Now, I think that this is a beautiful highlighter on medium to deeper skin tones. People with lighter skin tones have also told me that they enjoy using this on the face, but more like a blush lighter. So kind of like more a 2-in-1 for people with lighter skin tones. Now you can see that this is definitely a sparkly highlight, although when you apply it to the skin, I still feel like it looks very nice. And this is another one where I felt like a lot of people have come back and told me they really enjoy this shade as well. All right, next shade I have is also from Wet n Wild. This is one of their new Chameleon Chrome highlighters, and this is the shade Solar Ember. Again, these are really impressive for the price point. These retail in the US for around $7. They have more of a scattered sparkle effect than the Haus Labs formula, where I feel like the Haus Labs is more pigmented and more opaque. But as you can see when I'm applying it, you can definitely build it up. And if you're looking for an effect like Fire Opal, I feel like this will definitely dupe the vibes. Shade-wise, I would say that this one is a little less peachy than Fire Opal. And of course, these shades you can also use as an eyeshadow, but I think if I was going to use a highlighter as an eyeshadow, the Haus Labs would do better because it is more opaque. All right, now we're going to get into some indie eyeshadows. I've got some shades from Clionadh, Terra Moons, Shine by SD, and Touch of Glam. And I do have a discount affiliate codes with these brands that I'm going to pop up on the screen now. The first shade I have from Clionadh is called Scroll, and this is one of the newer shades. I think it's come out in the past year or two. This shade is more of like a pastel orange. It definitely has a hint of peach and pink in it. It's an electric multi-chrome, and I will say that the texture of this one is a little bit different than some of the other electrics. It's definitely more textured, and the sparkle particles are larger than a lot of the shades in the line. And this shade is described as having a pink and aqua leaning shift. Next we have the shade Majesty, and this is definitely one of the OG stained glass shades. It's described as being a vibrant multi-chrome. It's got quite a warm orange base, and it has a strong golden and green shift. Now, honestly, I still feel like this shade has a good amount of sparkle in it, but it's not as sparkly as some of the glitter vibrants like Regal, which is one of my top shades from the brand in general. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again, something I really, really do appreciate about Clionadh and their stained glass shades is that, in my experience, the majority of them don't get discontinued, which is really nice, and it must be really hard for them to do because they have an ever-growing inventory. All right, and the next shade we have is Monarch, and this one has been out for quite some time. It's not one of their OG shades, but it's definitely not a newer shade by any means, and this is a vibrant multi-chrome, definitely has a similar texture and feel to a shade like Majesty. I would describe this as having a peachy orange base, and it's got a strong golden shift. And I don't know, there's something about this shade from Clionadh. This is probably one of my favorite oranges from the brand. I think I like that this shade has a hint of peachy red in it. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I like that some of my chromes don't have that green shift. All right, and the final shade I have from Clionadh is called Flare. This shade, I would say, has quite similar vibes to Monarch, but maybe has a little bit less peach and red in it. The glitter type shades are some of my favorite, and I love the fact that a lot of them are available for under $10. They have such a pretty sparkle, and this shade is no exception. This is also the same category as some of my favorite blue-brown duochromes like Grisaille and Abrasion. So if you are looking for some options from Clionadh at a little bit more of a budget-friendly price point, definitely check out some of their glitter type shades. All right, next I've got a few shades from Terra Moons, and I did double check all of these shades are still in the inventory. This is the shade Star-Crossed, and I would describe this as more of a peachy orange in its base. It's a really beautiful, fresh spring color. This one definitely has a little bit more of a larger sparkle particle size, and you can see the way that that makes this shade a little bit more impactful than some of the others that I've tried on. Something that I've always said about Terra Moons is that there's a lot of variety in the texture of the shades. This shade is extra ethereal and springy, truly a showstopper. All right, and the next shade I have from Terra Moons is Firestorm, and this one, in comparison to the shade I just showed, I would say is a lot more of a summer fall shade. Again, you can wear any shade you want any time of the year. I'm just going off of vibes more than anything else. This has a bit more depth to it, and it's a very warm and toasty type of orange tone shade. It is what I would consider to be jewel toned, though this isn't a black-based iridescent. It's quite sparkly, but I would say the sparkle particles themselves are not as large as the shade that I just showed. To me, this is basically like fall in an eyeshadow. All right, and the final shade I have from Terra Moons is called Callisto. This is quite an interesting shade. I would say it is almost on the iridescent side. I would describe it as a very pale peachy orange, and it has a soft golden shift. Now, texture-wise, this one is a little bit on the flaky side, so it is something to keep in mind if that kind of texture doesn't work for you. But I gotta say, this is probably one of the more unique oranges in my collection, especially in tone. And as I've mentioned before, I love the shades that are versatile, where they can be used on the lid and as highlighting shades. And I do like that it doesn't have a white base, which means it's less likely to have any kind of cast on my skin tone. All right, and the next shade I have is from Shine by SD, and this is the shade No Other. It is part of their Fantasy line. All of the shadows in the Fantasy line definitely have some of the more intense multichrome shifts. And I also want to mention that this formula is a little bit flakier than their updated formula. They tried to reformulate so that the texture of the shade would be more approachable to more people. I really enjoy the shades in this line, and I've mentioned this before, my shades from Shine by SD are definitely some of the sparkliest in my collection. They do sparkle incredibly well, and I've heard from a lot of people that in general the texture of a lot of the shades from Shine by SD are quite approachable. All right, and the next shade I have is from Touch of Glam Beauty. This is another brand that I've definitely talked about several times on my channel before, and I feel like they have a very unique texture to a lot of their shades. They have a certain softness to them in the pan that really lets you pick up a lot of product. You actually have to be careful not to go overboard because that can totally happen. This is called Spill the Chai, and another thing I love, they've got such adorable names for a lot of the shades. Like the Terra Moon shade I mentioned, I feel like this is another perfect fall shade. The shade I would describe as having almost like a burnt orange base, and it's got more of an antique golden shift. All right, and I'm going to close up by mentioning a couple of palettes that have some noteworthy oranges. Starting off with this palette from Starborn. A lot of you will recognize this palette. It is the brand that was founded by Bad to the Brow, or Millie, and this is her first palette. I love the large selection of mattes in here, and the 4 shimmers that you have are very versatile. And that is because these are not full opacity chrome shadows. This is the iridescent. It's called Genesis, and as you can see on my fingertip, it has quite a soft powdery texture, and it can be smoothed out beautifully. In the little demo that I'm showing, I'm applying it as a highlighter and inner corner shade and brow bone shade. Definitely tons you can do with shades like these. And by the way, I use the palette for the eye look that I have on. All right, and the next palette I want to mention is Bonfire. I thought of this palette immediately when I thought of palettes that have a pop of orange. I would say actually this one has more than just a pop. This is a 12-pan palette and it's essentially divided into 4 quads. You have a green quad, an orange quad, and a more neutral quad. Honestly, this is hands down probably one of my favorite palettes that Glaminatrix has done, which is probably a little surprising because it is so warm toned. But I don't know, it's something about those green tones and orange tones in this color story. I just found them to be very harmonious. Also, in case you're curious, this is in stock, I believe. I think it was out of stock for quite a while. Something that you can always depend on with the Shimmers and Glaminatrix palette is that they are truly going to pack a punch, particularly in the sparkle department. The next shade I'm going to mention is from the Dive Rune Dewdrops 2 palette. Again, this is another brand I've talked about many times on my channel. I've also talked about Dewdrops a lot, to the point that you may be sick about hearing about it, but honestly, I just love it so much. It includes this beautiful fiery orange iridescent. It's got more of a semi-sheer base, and I just find that all of the shades in Dewdrops 1 and 2 are so high impact. In this little clip I'm showing, I am applying it as a highlighting shade. These little Dewdrops palettes pack such a punch, and I've gotten a lot of questions over time about iridescent palettes or shimmer palettes I recommend if you like blinding shades. And if you're looking for a good place to start, I just don't think these 2 palettes will let you down. All right, I'm actually really excited that somebody requested seeing orange chromes because I had so much fun nerding out over these different shades. I also love that there's a bunch of really great options from more affordable and drugstore brands. I do feel like orange is a pretty polarizing shade, especially in makeup, but there's a definite time and a place for it, and I'm finding over time that I am developing a little bit more of an affinity for it. But now that we've had a chance to go through everything, I would really love to hear what your favorite shade is, or if you were drawn to any of these shades if you are someone who doesn't tend to go for orange. If you made it to the end of this video, please leave me an orange heart emoji. And of course, let me know in the comments what other type of chrome shift or color you'd like to see next. As always, I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.